You could see the horror in its face.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most unsuspecting photos with the darkest stories behind them.
When the police found that camera and they said, oh, the camera's destroyed, it's been through the washing machine, but they take that little memory card and they find these photos?
Number 45, hikers on the Appalachian Trail. For centuries, hiking has been enjoyed by many as both a relaxing hobby and a way to reconnect with nature. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean it isn't without its own dangers. In September of 1990, Molly LaRue and Jeff Hood traveled to Perry County to hike along the Appalachian Trail. Before embarking on their journey, they took a photo in town, complete with hiking gear and excited smiles. They had no idea it would be their last. During their trip, they were attacked and slain by Paul David Cruz in a seemingly random act of violence. He served a life sentence for his crime until his own death in 2022. It's hard to see the couple's final portrait without being reminded of their horrific sudden end. Number 44, the Ghost of Dundas Peak. Do you believe in ghosts? If not, this may convince you otherwise. Located in Ontario, Canada, Dundas Peak is a beautiful site that may also be home to a lost spirit. In 2016, a Reddit user posted about a strange addition to one of their photos. In the wide angle, everything seems to be normal, just a man sitting on the peak. Zoom in closer, however, and you're met with the sight of a human-like figure in the background. The spot in the background is reportedly hard to access, for the living anyway. It was later revealed that a woman had gone missing shortly before the pictures were taken. Whether the figure was a shadow, another hiker, or her ghost is still unknown to this day. Number 43, Jeannie. Upon first glance, it's easy to assume that this is a child having her photo taken for the first time. While that's true, the full story is impossible to fathom. The girl, named Jeannie by those who saved her, had been locked in a room for nearly her entire life.
Completely restrained, she was forced to sit alone day after day and often through the night.
Her captor was her own father, who neglected her to the point where she never learned human language.
She barely spoke or made any noises.
After barely surviving for years, she was finally rescued in 1970. Despite being 13 in her first snapshot, she looks much younger, a sign of the mistreatment she endured. A team of doctors was able to teach her some communication skills, and she's still alive today, an example of the effects of severe childhood neglect.
Jeannie now lives in an adult care foster home in Southern California.
Number 42, Regina K. Walters. Hitchhiking is still a popular practice globally, but cases like this may have led to its dip in prevalence in the United States. In February of 1990, Regina K. Walters and her boyfriend Ricky Lee Jones attempted to get a ride from Texas to Mexico.
Whether she was following the lead of her new teenage boyfriend or just testing her independence, the trucker soon stopped for the pretty young girl.
They were picked up by Robert Ben Rhodes, otherwise known as the truck stop killer. He swiftly ended Jones's life and took Regina captive. After weeks of torture, he took photos of her before murdering her as well.
When I saw those photos, I said, this is Regina Walters.
One shows her posing in fear, and if one didn't know the context, it could be mistaken as staged. The truth is much more bleak. Rhodes is serving a life sentence, but his horrid acts live on in images like these.
Rhodes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Number 41, Alan Ruby's friends. Some people use social media as a way of updating their loved ones on their lives, and others use it to cover their tracks. In 2014, Alan Ruby was only 19 when he shot his parents and sister after having been financially cut off. It's believed that he did so in an attempt to receive as large of an inheritance as possible.
19-year-old Alan Ruby is charged with murdering his mom, dad, and sister.
In an attempt to create an alibi, he traveled to Dallas for a college football game, where he took and posted a now-deleted photo of his supposed best friends. Those pictured had no idea they were being used in his elaborate ruse. He was found out and arrested days later, and is currently serving life in prison.
He utters 3 critical words police have been waiting for.
I did it. Number 40, military glider test. Aviation is considered to be one of the safest forms of travel, but that doesn't stop horrific accidents from occurring. In 1943, a new glider intended for military use was to be tested within full view of the public.
A day before the flight, reporters had asked Mayor Becker about the possible hazards. He said he didn't think it would be dangerous.
A crowd of thousands gathered around to watch 10 significant St. Louis citizens, including the mayor at the time, fly over the city. A photo documenting their excitement was taken just before takeoff, and neither they nor the spectators had any idea it would be their last.
And almost instantly, one of the wings moved up into a 45-degree angle.
Mid-flight, an engineering error caused one of the craft's wings to rip off, sending it into a nosedive.
It started to spiral. And I wasn't thinking about the poor people inside. I was thinking about making a photograph.
Everyone aboard died, with their last image serving as a haunting reminder of how quickly things can go wrong. Number 39, Tereska's scrawls. A child's art can potentially reveal much more than what appears on the surface. David Seymour documented this during his time at a Polish facility for children in 1948. One of his photos depicts a young girl apparently scribbling on the board. Though it looks innocent in nature, the reality was much darker. The child, named Tereska, had been asked to draw her home, resulting in the unnerving illustration. She had reportedly lived in a concentration camp throughout the war, and the trauma bled through into her interpretation of the word home. What makes her drawing all the more haunting is that other children with the same prompt drew more traditional pictures, proving how much she had been affected by her circumstances. Number 38, the Whitaker's graduation photo. Even supposedly happy events can hide much darker intentions. Though one may think this photo simply showcases a mother's pride for her two sons, the truth is much darker. Throughout his adolescence in the 1990s, Thomas Bart Whitaker got into plenty of legal trouble. His misdeeds continued into adulthood when he falsified his attendance at Sam Houston State University. His family believed his ruse, with this photo being taken to celebrate his supposed graduation from the university. Later that night, Bart's accomplices carried out the murder he had planned, snuffing out both his mother's and his siblings' lives in an instant.
Kevin opens the door. There's this huge, loud noise. Bang!
His father survived the attack and even advocated for his son's death sentence to be commuted.
I'll be able to actually hug him, shake his hand.
Number 37, Myra Hindley with dog.
The crimes committed by Moore's murderer, Myra Hindley, shocked the nation.
Normally, an owner's connection to their pet would be seen as wholesome, but when you're a serial killer, all pretense of that goes out the window. This image appears to depict a young woman hugging her dog close, but unlike her pup, she was anything but innocent. The woman pictured is Myra Hindley, one of the two perpetrators of the Moores murders that were carried out throughout the early 1960s.
A case like this was unique. For the first time in British history, a woman had been implicated in a killing partnership.
She, along with her partner in crime Ian Brady, had killed 5 children before they were arrested in 1965. It's even believed that in this very photo, she was gazing down at the makeshift graves of one of her victims.
She's got the devil in it. She's the devil itself.
Number 36, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 pre-takeoff. The combination of sheer tragedy and unflinching resilience has made this one of the most well-known aviation disasters in history. In October of 1972, some of the players on the Uruguayan rugby team were photographed before their flight took off. It's clear by their calm demeanors that they weren't anticipating any turbulence, let alone a full-on crash into the Andes Mountains.
And the front part of the plane lifting up a little bit, and then the moment of impact.
Later that night, the passengers aboard Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 would be forced to survive on their own for months, even resorting to cannibalism to do so.
To survive in the frozen wilderness, they ate the flesh of those who died.
Their pre-flight pic is a stark difference to the more sensationalized one of them sitting outside the wreckage, but it serves as a perfect example of how quickly circumstances can change.
The only thing we have there to eat was the bodies of our friends.
Number 35, Essa Ricker, Kelsey Webster, and Savannah Webster. What started as an innocent attempt to get a cute picture ended in tragedy. In 2011, 3 teenage girls, Essa Ricker, Kelsey Webster, and her sister Savannah, had been taking pictures on a set of railroad tracks. While they appeared to have been aware of one train going by, they had no idea the one was coming from the opposite direction as well. Their last selfie, with the 3 of them smiling excitedly while the train's headlights shine behind them, shows the final seconds before the tragic collision. Essa and Kelsey were both killed on the spot, and Savannah was left with critical injuries that she succumbed to days later.
She was just a really nice person. She really cared about a lot of people.
Number 34, camp staff taking the day off. One of the most unsettling facts about the Holocaust is that those perpetrating it did not seem to care about the gravity of their actions. This was evidenced by a series of photos taken by a Nazi officer named Hawker. These captured his time working at Auschwitz, with his work showing an even more unsettling side to the regime.
There's one photograph. It's a sing-along picture. And along the bottom are 7 of the highest-ranking officers in Auschwitz.
One in particular showcases a group of young men and women laughing and smiling, an intense contrast to the pain and suffering they were doling out to their prisoners.
They're young and they're out for a good time.
They were interspersed with appearances at more formal military events as well, showcasing how easily they could disconnect from the war crimes they were committing. Number 33, Sydney Loof's pre-date selfie. The digital era has completely changed dating, for better and for worse. When Sydney Loof matched with Bailey Boswell in 2017, she had no idea what was in store for her. They had already been on one date and had planned a second, which Sydney commemorated with a simple Snapchat selfie.
This photo, posted on Snapchat Wednesday, was the last time anyone heard from 24-year-old Sydney Loof.
That self-portrait would ultimately be her last, as she would be kidnapped by Boswell and her partner Aubrey Trail later that night. The pair denied their involvement in a Facebook Live video, but Loof's remains being found miles from where the alleged date occurred weeks later discounted those claims. After a series of trials, Boswell was sentenced to life, while Trail remains on death row.
Aubrey Trail could face the death penalty if the jury finds evidence of aggravating factors.
Number 32, Jolie Callan. At first glance, you might not think much of this picture showing a girl standing at the edge of a cliff and taking a picture of the view. She appears to be doing what anyone her age would, capturing a memory that would last a lifetime. Unfortunately, this would be the last sight Jolie Callan would see. In 2015, she went hiking with her ex-boyfriend Lauren Bunner. He documented their final trip together with several photos before shooting her and pushing her body off the very cliff she had just been standing on and photographing. While he was nearly tried as a juvenile, despite being 20 at the time, that decision was reversed, earning him a 52-year prison sentence instead.
It's been a long fight, and without y'all, I don't know where I'd be.
Number 31, young girl with baby. The reality of some events is so unfathomable that you wish the incorrect yet innocent assumption was the truth. One perfect example is a photo showing a young girl and man standing beside a stroller. It's easy to assume that it depicts two siblings with their father, but the truth is much more stomach-turning. The girl, Lina Marcela Medina de Jorado, is the baby's mother, and the man is the doctor that delivered him. In 1939, she became the youngest known mother in human history at just 5 years old. While precocious puberty explains how it was scientifically possible, the implications of how it came to be are horrific at best. As of 2025, she's still alive, and the identity of the father remains unknown. Number 30, John Edward Robinson's family portrait. At first glance, this seems like a normal family photo, depicting the classic nuclear setup, complete with a baby sitting on her father's lap. However, the reality is much darker. The man in the picture is John Edward Robinson, later exposed as a con man and a serial killer who operated in Kansas City. In 1985, Robinson cunningly befriended the infant's struggling mom under the guise of providing them with a better life. Soon afterwards, he killed the mother and gave her baby to his brother to raise.
They thought everything was on the up and up. They had the papers, they had the adoption forms that looked like been signed by judges and attorneys. They had no clue.
To make things worse, Robinson remained in the girl's life, posing as her uncle until he was finally arrested over a decade later. This portrait captured a final moment of peace before the lives of several people were irreparably changed forever.
John Robinson's got that baby and posing for pictures in his house with that baby, bouncing on his knee with his brother and sister-in-law there who have come down to Chicago to get their new adopted baby.
Number 29, his master's voice. Who knew a logo could be so devastating? While the sight of a cute dog listening to a phonograph seems adorable upon first glance, the story behind it is much sadder. According to the original artist, his inspiration came from watching the pooch listening to his late owner's voice and seemingly trying to figure out where it was coming from. That explanation immediately takes the painting from cute to tragic. The thought of a pet still being able to recognize the people who raised them even long after their deaths is bittersweet at best. There's no doubt at all just how good of a boy he truly was, and his unwavering loyalty to his late master has been immortalized forever. Number 28, hiking tragedy. Do you notice anything unusual in this photo of someone climbing a waterfall? While it looks like a regular landscape, there's one thing that sticks out: a sudden shock of red hair. That color saved a young woman who had fallen off the same cliff in Santa Barbara County in 2014 and been badly hurt. She blended in with the scenery, so much so that the photographer had captured their friend's climb without realizing she was in the background. Although they eventually noticed her and assisted in her rescue, it was an extremely close call. We can only imagine the horror the photographer would have felt had they not noticed her in time, and instead found her in the shots when it was too late. Number 27, last photo of Abigail Williams. In 2017, teenager Liberty German innocently posted an image of her friend Abigail Williams crossing a bridge in Delphi, Indiana. Looking at it, you wouldn't think anything was amiss, just a couple of pals having fun. Later that same day, they were both captured and subsequently killed by an unknown assailant.
This is the bridge that we've all seen in the images released to the media. You can see now some flowers left behind in memory of the girls.
A video on German's phone showed an unknown man ordering them down a hill. This provided police with a lead, and on October 31st, 2022, they charged a suspect with the murders, who has since confessed to his wife while in prison, according to court documents.
It was Libby who managed to take a cell phone picture of a strange man on the bridge. He's the prime suspect.
In 2022, Richard Allen was arrested as a suspect and tried in 2024. He was found guilty and sentenced to 1,430 years in prison. Number 26, James Bulger and his abductors. Some images highlight just how cruel the world can be. Upon first glance, seeing a couple of young kids walking hand in hand wouldn't trigger any suspicion. To many, it would just look like an older and younger sibling. However, that idea was turned on its head after one horrifying instance. On February 12, 1993 in Merseyside, England, security footage captured two children walking together, an older boy and a toddler.
James was being led away by two young boys. Immediately then, it confirmed the witness that had stated earlier that there were two boys on the canal bank. It then became very worrying.
Unbeknownst to adults nearby, the toddler, James Bulger, was being kidnapped. He lost his life later that day at the hands of the older child and his friend. Looking at the original footage, no one would have guessed his true intentions. Justice was swiftly served, but the incident shook the nation and started a larger discourse about punishing minors. Number 25, scuba diving death. What was supposed to be a fun, peaceful activity suddenly became a crime scene. While going scuba diving, a man took a photo of his wife underwater. This could have been a cool shot, but their attention swiftly shifted to a shocking discovery in the background. Behind his partner was the body of another diver lying on the floor of the reef. This belonged to Tina Watson, who had been on her honeymoon in Australia before her untimely death on October 22, 2003. The news caused immediate speculation that culminated in her husband being convicted of manslaughter.
They argue he planned to kill his new wife, also he could collect on her life insurance policy.
The fact that this was all caused by one seemingly innocent picture is harrowing. Had it not been taken, her body may not have been discovered until much later. Number 24, Haiku Stairs. Hawaii boasts a plethora of gorgeous scenery, both natural and human-made. This includes the captivating Haiku Stairs, which unfortunately have been closed off to hikers for decades due to their dangerous state. Despite this, many adventurers still brave the trek. In early 2015, teenage hiker Dalen Pua walked the trail and posted photos of the view. After he went missing, those posts became the only clues. His parents soon made a chilling discovery: a hidden figure camouflaged within the greenery, seemingly stalking their son. This revelation transformed the case from a simple disappearance to something more sinister. While the trail has gone cold, the family is still determined to identify the man pictured and get closure on what happened to their son. Number 23, Franklin Delano Floyd and Suzanne Marie Savakis. What seems like a wholesome portrait of a father and daughter is actually much more twisted and horrific. The man in the photo, Franklin Delano Floyd, abducted Suzanne Savakis as a young girl and raised her. As if that wasn't twisted enough, he ended up marrying her when she grew up, even forcing her to take on a series of aliases to keep the police at bay.
Floyd knew the law enforcement would be looking for a man, his daughter, and her child. They would not be looking for a man and his wife and their child. And that's why they stopped and got married.
He ended up taking her life when she tried escaping as an adult. When looking at an image of them, many wouldn't even fathom that so much evil could be brewing just beneath the surface. Although he was eventually imprisoned for his crimes, the chilling snapshot shows how long he had gotten away with his twisted deeds. Number 22, Class of 1999. Class photos are not a new concept. They've been around for decades and show a glimpse of the graduating cohorts. This one looks to be completely normal until you look at the top left corner. There, it's easier to notice a few kids pretending to point guns at the camera. Those students, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, the perpetrators of the horrific Columbine massacre.
Kids, grab your friends, hold them tight, and never be mad at people because it could happen in a second that they'll be gone.
Their pose served as an early red flag prior to their act, but the group was so large that they completely slipped into the background. Once the shooting had occurred, the picture was seen in a new light. Now, it serves as a reminder that monsters can be anywhere, even hiding in plain sight in the high school gymnasium. Number 21. Harold Agnew holding Fat Man H-bomb. It's interesting how even culturally significant and controversial moments can have the most banal beginnings. Before the nuclear bombs were dropped in World War II, they'd been worked on by top scientists. During this developmental phase, they looked nothing like the weapons of mass destruction they're known to be today.
Actually, we did not witness Hiroshima. We were busy with our instruments.
In fact, they appeared so innocuous that when physicist Harold Agnew was photographed holding one of their cores, people didn't even realize what it was. His smile and the seemingly ordinary object in his hand masked the project's true intentions. This picture of Agnew holding the plutonium is a stark reminder of the people behind some of the most devastatingly powerful objects in human history. Number 20. Tragedy by the Sea. At first glance, this photo might appear romantic. After all, it shows a couple on a windswept beach. But look closer, and the woman's distraught expression says it all. Right before photographer John L. Gaunt took the shot, the couple's 19-month-old son had been happily playing in their yard. But he wandered off and disappeared into the waves. The couple is standing on the shore, realizing their son is gone. This photo actually won the 1955 Pulitzer Prize, and given the backstory, it's a haunting shot of sudden and unexpected tragedy. Number 19. The Space Shuttle Challenger crew. It's unclear where the astronauts in this photo are going, but they appear excited and optimistic about whatever's on the horizon. Doing some digging, you'll find that the crew was walking out of the operations and checkout building. They were headed for Pad 39B, where the Space Shuttle Challenger was about to take off. The STS-51L mission was notable for its diverse crew, although that's sadly not what it's best remembered for.
Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Only a minute after launching, the space shuttle exploded. While nobody knows precisely when each crew member died, nobody survived after the spacecraft hit the ocean. This photo was taken on January 28, 1986, mere hours before the crew unknowingly embarked on what would be their final mission. Number 18. Christopher McCandless. With a grin across his face, the man in this picture appears to be content and healthy. This bearded explorer is Christopher McCandless, the subject of the 2007 biopic Into the Wild.
Is there anybody here?
Leaving his old life behind, McCandless decided to fend for himself in Mother Nature's backyard, eventually seeking refuge in an abandoned Fairbanks Bus 142. In August 1992, the 24-year-old McCandless died at Stampede Trail, Alaska, most likely due to starvation. Based on the last self-photo he took, it's evident McCandless knew his days were numbered. While it's hard to make out, the paper McCandless is holding is his farewell message, reading, quote, "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye, and may God bless all." Number 17. Lightning strike. While the numbers vary, the odds of getting struck by lightning are relatively slim. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take lightning safety seriously, though. This photo of 18-year-old Michael McQuilkin and his 12-year-old brother Sean has served as a cautionary tale ever since it was taken in 1975. Posing together at Morro Rock, the brothers were goofing around with their hair standing on end. Their static hair and those storm clouds in the background were more foreboding than either realized, as lightning struck them shortly after their sister took the picture. Another hiker died, and while the brothers survived, Sean was left with third-degree burns and took his own life in 1989. Michael continues to spread awareness about the dangers and warning signs of lightning. Number 16. Another day in Oma. Looking at this photo, the first thing you're inclined to notice is the man standing in the street and the child on his shoulders. Meanwhile, the red car parked on the side of the road appears inconsequential. What you might not realize is that the photo was taken in Oma, a Northern Ireland town, on August 15, 1998, not long before this car blew up. The Real Irish Republican Army, a splinter group, executed this car bombing 5 days after the Good Friday Agreement was signed. Although the Real IRA claimed that innocent civilians were not their target, 29 lives were lost in the bombing, and roughly 220 were injured.
It was the biggest loss of life in a single attack in Northern Ireland.
While the man and child thankfully survived the bombing, the person behind the camera did not. Number 15. David A. Johnston. While not a household name, David A. Johnston was a revered volcanologist who, along with the United States Geological Survey, helped save thousands of people through his on-site work. Tragically, Johnston lost his own life in the process. All seems well in this photo, as Johnston sits in a chair outside looking into the camera. Little did anyone know that within the next 13 hours, Johnston would perish in the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. The eruption, preceded by seismic activity, was first reported by Johnston, who radioed the message, quote, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." Within the next seconds, the signal went out and Johnston was never heard from again.
So I guess I had the realization right away that this was some kind of a tragedy. And on the one hand, it was this huge, exciting, and interesting magmatic eruption, and on the other hand, I was pretty certain that something terrible had happened to Dave.
While his remains were never found, it's believed that Johnston died at Coldwater 2, a post that wasn't as safe as anticipated.
I think one of the things to put in perspective is that 234 square miles of that area of Washington were devastated by that blast. So 5.7 miles, that was within that devastation zone, the blast zone.
Number 14, Mark Jackson's basketball card. For die-hard sports fans, you'll recognize the player on this basketball card as Mark Jackson, who started his NBA career with the New York Knicks and later coached the Golden State Warriors. At first glance, this card would likely blend in with the rest of your collection. Take a closer look at the lower left-hand corner, though. You see those two young fans sitting in the front row? They are Lyle and Eric Menendez, two wealthy brothers who took the lives of their allegedly abusive parents on August 20th, 1989.
The brothers who were thought to have it all, at times acting out, even going as far as robbing houses until they were caught.
The brothers weren't arrested for these crimes until March 8th, 1990, and in between that time, they spent an extravagant amount of money.
So at the time, nothing seemed suspicious to you about them?
No. But soon detectives shifted their focus.
The brothers were out there spending money like it was water.
It appears that some of that fortune went towards Knicks tickets before their apprehension. Number 13, Rodney Alcala. If we asked you to name the man in this photo, you might take a wild guess and say Christoph Waltz if he had Weird Al's hairdresser. In reality, he's Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. How did he get such an outlandish nickname? Because Alcala appeared on the dating game prior to his 1979 arrest.
The woman who won a date with him ended up backing out, saying she found him creepy.
Come on, over here.
Her intuition probably saved her life. Others would not be so fortunate.
While his total victim count could be as high as 130, Alcala was trialed for 5 murders in 2010, almost 31 years after his apprehension. Alcala represented himself in court, as seen in this picture. Even more bizarre, Alcala was his own defense witness, asking himself, quote, "Rodney, would you please tell us about your hair?" Alcala ultimately received the death sentence, but died of natural causes while awaiting execution. Number 12, Ayano Tokumasu. Remember that scene in Superman 2 where a little boy falls over the rail at Niagara Falls?
Oh my God!
Well, that sort of thing happens more often than you think, but Superman sadly isn't around to save the day. On the surface, there doesn't seem to be anything particularly special about this photo, which sees several people gathering at Niagara River. The woman in the red sweater is Ayano Tokumasu, an exchange student from Japan. If you think standing on that pillar seems kind of dangerous, you'd be right. Not long after the photo was taken, she lost her balance and fell over the edge, ultimately going down Horseshoe Falls. Tokumasu was swept from the river's Canadian side to its American side, where her lifeless body was discovered.
People just go too far. You know, I don't blame anything on the park. I just think people wanted to get that extra edge, get closer. And unfortunately, things happen.
Number 11, the SS Grand Caen. The SS Grand Caen may not be a household name like the Titanic, but it's forever linked to the Texas City disaster. And this photo captured the vessel just before tragedy spiraled out of control. On April 16, 1947, smoke was seen emitting from the docked ship in Texas City. A fire had broken out with about 2,200 tons of ammonium nitrate aboard. This naturally amounted to an explosion, but that was only the beginning.
Texas City, Texas was joined by a tremendous blast.
The blast ignited a subsequent explosion on the High Flyer, another ship carrying ammonium nitrate.
And about 8:15, they hauled me to come aboard the ship, that they had a fire down in the hold. went aboard the ship, and we seen smoke coming up from between the cargo and the side of the ship.
The ensuing chain reaction resulted in a loss of 581 lives, with only one survivor from the local fire department. Number 10. Apollo 1 pool party. The space pod in the swimming pool is only the second weirdest thing about this photo. Like, how often do you see astronauts lounging on water floats while wearing their spacesuits? Surely there must be a humorous story behind such a surreal image. Unfortunately, it's quite the opposite. The suited-up astronauts in this photo were Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee. They were training for the Apollo 1 mission, which was planned to commence in February of 1967. On January 27th of that year, a fire broke out in the cabin during a pre-launch test. Unable to open the hatch door, the 3 men perished in the fire, which was caused by electrical problems. Thus, the mission ended before it even started.
The pad where Grissom, Chaffee, and White died is now a memorial. Lieutenant Colonel Virgil Grissom, U.S. Air Force, and Lieutenant Commander Roger Chaffee are buried at the Arlington National Cemetery. Lieutenant Colonel Edward White is interred at West Point Military Academy.
Number 9. Bear photographer. There are countless photos of bears out there, and this one doesn't look much different from all the rest. Since the picture was taken from a distance and the bear isn't charging, the photographer seemingly isn't in any immediate danger. After Darsh Patel snapped this pic using his phone, however, the bear started to follow him and his friends. The group split up as the bear began to close in on them, ultimately pursuing Patel. His phone was eventually found with animal teeth marks, while Patel's body was discovered at a nearby ravine.
A scenic Sunday afternoon ended in horror when 5 hikers crossed paths with a 300-pound black bear that looked similar to this one.
The bear was still hanging around the 22-year-old's fatally mauled remains, and the authorities took the wild animal out.
We believe this bear was about 4 years old. It was not a tagged bear, meaning it had no history with the DEP. There was no research done on this bear that we know of. It had no previous incidents of aggression that would have called it to our attention.
This photo op came at a steep price for Patel and the bear. Number 8. What are you smiling at? The 2 men being escorted in this photo are Richard Hickok and Perry Edward Smith. Although handcuffs are visible, the jolly smile on Smith's face suggests they're only in for a mild offense. This couldn't be further from the truth. Ever hear of a book called In Cold Blood? Well, Hickok and Smith provided the basis for this best-selling true crime novel. The 2 criminals were convicted for the Clutter family murders and sentenced to death.
Richard Hickok, the first to be executed, decided by a coin toss. Perry Smith's was second.
In this chilling photo, Hickok and Smith can be seen leaving the courtroom right after receiving the guilty verdict. Much can be said about Smith's haunting grin. If there's one takeaway from the image, though, it's that this crime was indeed cold-blooded. Number 7. BTK at graduation. Dennis Rader was his church's president, a Cub Scout leader, and an all-around pillar of the community. As you can tell from this photo, Rader was also a family man who seemed quite proud of his daughter Carrie at her college graduation. This would all be overshadowed, though, when Rader was exposed as the BTK Strangler, the letters standing for Bind, Torture, Kill, his preferred MO.
When BTK came forward, everybody's life changed. He would see a woman walking and he would say, "She's next."
Over the course of multiple decades, this seemingly ordinary guy took 10 lives. In 2005, the authorities used Carrie Rader's DNA to link her father to a crime scene, culminating in his arrest.
Carrie had graduated from K-State, and while there, had tests at health services, both a pap smear and a biopsy. Investigators traveled to Manhattan with a subpoena in hand for those smears. Her DNA, a direct match to DNA left at BTK crime scenes.
Rader pled guilty and was subsequently sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. About 14 years after her father was captured, Carrie released a book entitled A Serial Killer's Daughter, My Story of Faith, Love, and Overcoming.
It's been like a cathartic process of having to go do really hard work and find those memories again of my father that I had lost and to try to separate my dad back out as my dad and remove the BTK from it.
Number 6. Dutch Girls of Panama. Scrolling through Instagram, chances are you'll stumble across a number of pleasant photos like these. Standing against a colorful backdrop with green hills and blue skies, 22-year-old Lisana Froon appears to have a lovely day ahead of her. Froon was on vacation with 21-year-old Chris Kramers, a fellow Dutch student seen in another photo at the same spot. The two set out for a hike in Panama on April 1, 2014 when these pics were taken. This was also the day that Froon and Kramers disappeared, resulting in a grueling search. 10 weeks down the line, Froon's backpack was uncovered with her camera inside. Froon and Kramers' remains were eventually found scattered across the jungle, with the cause of death still up for debate. Number 5. Travis Alexander. Travis Alexander was 30 when this photo was taken of him in the shower. The person behind the camera was Jodi Arias, with whom Alexander had a shaky romantic relationship. This was the last photo ever taken of Alexander alive, as his friends found his body in the shower a few days later. It was only a matter of time until the authorities connected the dots and arrested his ex-girlfriend. Arias constantly changed her story, originally pleading innocence, later claiming that 2 intruders broke in, and ultimately testifying that she killed Alexander in self-defense.
Why? The simple answer is that he attacked me, and I defended myself.
In the end, Arias was deemed guilty of first-degree murder, receiving a life sentence.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn, in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, do find the defendant as to count 1, first-degree murder, guilty.
Alexander appears off guard in this photo. He clearly had no idea what was coming. Number 4. The Eternal Shadow. At face value, this dark outline of a person could be chalked up to some harmless graffiti. While we wish that were the case, this shadowy figure resulted from the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In August of 1945, the US dropped 2 nuclear weapons, Little Boy and Fat Man, that resulted in anywhere between 129 and 226,000 deaths.
At 8:14, it was a sunny day. At 8:15, it was a hellscape.
Whoever this person was, it appears they were using a walking stick during their final moments when the blast hit. As a result of the bombing, an imprint of this unknown soul was left on the steps. This wasn't an isolated incident, as numerous shadows can still be found around the bombing sites, forever immortalizing those horrifying days. Number 3. The Happy, Creepy Killer. Without any background information, the wide-eyed kid in this picture probably wouldn't strike you as very threatening. When you know the whole story, however, that innocent smile of his will quickly turn into a ghastly grin. This curly-haired 17-year-old is Jeffrey Franklin, who killed his parents and attacked his 3 siblings. Following a car chase, the authorities cornered Franklin at a dead end. The photo shows Franklin in the back of a police vehicle, not appearing especially distraught over the atrocities he's committed or his impending future behind bars. Claiming he felt like a, quote, evil being had taken over him, Franklin pled guilty and received 3 consecutive life sentences.
I don't blame anybody for the reactions to me because I feel that I justified most of them.
Number 2. Goodbye, John Lennon. We're all familiar with the music of John Lennon as well as his tragic fate. Photographer Paul Gorish couldn't have predicted it at the time, but this would reportedly be the last picture anyone took of Lennon. The image seems innocent enough as the former Beatle signs his autograph for an apparent admirer. Lennon's impending demise was creeping up in the photo's corner, however. The man standing next to him is none other than Mark David Chapman, the one responsible for Lennon's untimely demise.
Hard to get to write at first. And then he wrote his name, John Lennon, and then underneath that, 1980. And he looked at me, as I mentioned earlier, he said, "Is that all? Do you want anything else?"
6 hours or so after this photo was taken, Lennon and Yoko Ono encountered Chapman again outside of their apartment building, the Dakota. With Lennon's back turned, Chapman drew his firearm, and the music world would never be the same again.
So I called the Daily News. He said to me, you think you have what? And he said, "Paul, are you sure that this is the man that you believe killed him?" And I said, "Well, that's the man named Mark from Hawaii who was waiting out there all day with the album, who got the autograph."
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Tyler Hadley and the Red Solo Cup. Mere hours before raising his red Solo Cup in this pic, 17-year-old Tyler Hadley hid his parents' cell phones and shut their dog in a closet. Hadley proceeded to end his mother's life and then did the same to his father. After cleaning up the mess, Hadley shared on Facebook he was throwing a party that very night. At said party, Hadley told his best friend Michael Mandel all about his heinous actions.
After he told me, I didn't believe him because he's been my best friend forever. I would never suspect anything like this. And I was looking around. He told me if I look at enough, I can see signs. I looked on the floor, I could see signs of blood. And that's when I went around back and looked in his parents' bedroom.
Using his phone, Mandel subsequently took this picture with Hadley, knowing it would be the last time they ever saw each other. Leaving the party, Mandel called Crime Stoppers. This led to Hadley's arrest and life sentence without parole.
Nearly 3 years of pain and worry now starting to slowly subside with the stroke of a gavel.
Which of these deceptively normal photos fooled you the most? Let us know in the comments below.
It is a picture his best friend says Hadley claimed would be his last.